and starts, as I guess most do. In 2008, when I wrote it, Mark Forster was originally going to direct it, and we worked together for a year or so on it, but because of, the nature of the beast, casting and financing and didn't quite work out, and he was, rightfully eager to make a movie. So he stayed on as an executive producer with his partner, Brad Simpson. But Mickey Liddell had always loved the script, and once that sort of fell apart, he came in.
Well, there were several things that were unusual about Disconnect. I had a financing partner. We're in a kind of interesting and enviable position of being able to interview our choice of directors for the job. And we had a number of experienced directors throw their hat in the ring and had some quite interesting meetings. But we both came to Henry Alex Rubin as the choice. I actually hadn't been familiar with Henry's work. I'd heard about Murderball, but I missed it when it came through and was Oscar nominated, and I'd heard it was a good film.
Well, I had made documentaries, and I had resisted making fiction movies. I'd read at least between 100 and 200 scripts, none of which seemed real. And this was the first script that I got that seemed like it was talking about real things that I could relate to.
His agent was a good friend of mine, called me on a Friday afternoon, said, "Would you do me a solid? I've got a filmmaker sitting in my office. He's read your script, he loves it, wants to come over and meet." And I said, how quickly could he get here? And Henry drove over. We had a terrific creative meeting. I thought he really had a lot of smart things to say about the script, starting first and foremost with announcing he just wasn't interested in making a movie about technology. He wanted to make a movie about people, and he liked these characters, and he thought there was something really human and emotional at the core of Andy's story.
He was the first director who walked in and said, "I am." He's in his early 30s, and he said, "I grew up on this. This is all true. This is exactly what my life is." And I thought he's lived all over the world and done commercials and done documentaries, and he said, "I want to make this feel real."
I had never made a fiction film before, and so I didn't quite know how to make a fiction film. And so the way I approached this film was to do extensive interviews.
We could put in the room with them, and they would see his work, and they'd understand the connection between the material and his voice and his style as a filmmaker.
I don't get invited or trusted with dramatic work very often, and so I said yes, maybe even before I read this. I'm not sure. I'm a whore. But if it was before I read it, I was very eased by reading the script because my decision was very good. It was
screen, that I barely had to direct him. With Jason, it was just always trying something else.
Again, uniquely, we were very empowered by our partner who said, he really wanted to just try to get a great actor for every role in the movie. So it wasn't the typical kind of tail wagging the dog where you had to cast a certain name or cast for a pre-sale value or a foreign sales deal in France or Italy or whatever.
Well, I love the script. I just couldn't put it down. It's really a thriller about the age that we live in, and so that's what first drew me to it. And I think it's also such a challenge to make films where you have different storylines and make them work and want to watch all of the storylines. And they,
well-written character. And then I met with Henry. He came over and to my hotel, and we just sat, and I didn't know him at all. But I'd seen Murderball, and so I knew that he was a great documentary filmmaker, but this was his first narrative feature. And you can be a fantastic documentary filmmaker, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're great with actors.
Alex comes from that Swedish school where they really don't like to do too much on screen. The Swedes are very restrained and really don't like to overact. They don't come from the scenery chewing school of acting. And so that was great for Alex's performance because he was able to do very little.
Also just responded to Henry and his work.
I think what Henry brought that was so perfect for this particular material was his documentary sensibility, where he has got a very keen eye for nonfiction, for the real.
Documentary filmmaking doesn't necessarily translate to making a fiction movie, but these guys, Bill Horberg and Mickey Liddell, saw some of the documentaries that I'd made and saw some of the commercials I had made and thought maybe it would be an interesting idea to apply a documentary filmmaker's eye to a fiction movie. And so I think they took a big chance on me because, you know, I'm completely untested.
Specifically, he made Murderball. So Henry's job as a documentary filmmaker is to...
I'm feeling really comfortable in that world. As soon as I got on the set of my first fiction movie, I found myself reverting back to those things that I do on the set of a documentary. For example, on a documentary, you don't say cut because they're not actors. So you just roll because you're hoping to capture something. And usually it's very boring and dull, which is why you overshoot on a documentary. So I was doing the same thing on this film. I would shoot between takes all the time, and I wouldn't yell cut. I would just have them do the scene again, and we would do long series of about 4 or 5 takes, where I would just give them one little word or one little thought between takes to see if it would push the stream in a different direction.
There'd be moments where you'd shoot the scene and you wouldn't see any cameras at all.
On a documentary, you never want to put the camera near a real person's face because it changes their behavior.
He would black out, you know, the crew and the camera and set up screens and try to bring the camera.
But I couldn't even see it. And it made that experience so incredible for me and made me go, oh, this is why I did this film.
I noticed that the further away I put the camera, just like in a documentary, the more they would forget about the machinery of filmmaking and the more natural they would be.
But he really brings that documentary kind of gritty style and real style to the film that makes it come off as being so much more authentic and real and true, you know.
Is a kind of a sad reality of what's happening and how dangerous that becomes. It becomes really dangerous.
The true risk is that we forget to really connect with each other because we don't have to.
That's one of the things I've always loved about movies is that we all go into this dark, cavernous space and dream the same dream together. Because that's what I think about movies, is that you get to turn off your life and you have to turn off your cell phone and everything. And for two